We'll call to order the City of Winters Regular Planning Commission on November 12th, 2019. Tago, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Adams?
Here.
Altamirano?
Here.
Contreras?
Here.
Riley?
Here.
Schrupp? Vice Chair Baker?
Here.
Chairperson Meyer?
Here. Dave, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We will now open this up to public input. This is on anything that is not on the agenda tonight, which are the two items, the home in Olive Grove, and then the development by the LDS Church. So if you have anything else you'd like to address the commission on besides those two items, now is your time. And seeing none, we will close the citizen input. Minutes, do we have any comments, corrections on the minutes? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
And we have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
All opposed? The minutes abstained because she was not here. Okay, on to the discussion item. First one on Olive Grove subdivision.
Good evening. The item before you tonight is approval for a single house on lot 18 of what would be called phase 2 of the Olive Grove subdivision. Right now, there are 3 houses currently under construction as part of phase 1, which are the lots that face Hemingway. By our ordinance, any new single-family home has to go through a public hearing process, and the reason you're here tonight is because of that. The house itself is a fairly contemporary-looking house. We had some design comments that we included in the staff report relative to the use of materials. If you look at the elevation here, you'll see that the predominant siding material is board and batt.
It might be better if you use the mouse or something.
The mouse? Okay. Can you point at it? So this is the siding material.
First off, could you identify yourself, please?
Well, I'm the staff person. My name's Dave Dowswell.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll see that there's board and batt as the siding on these elevations here. There's an unusual feature that's to make a mistake more than anything else. On this left elevation, it shows horizontal siding, which, as I said, is inconsistent with the rest of the house. So in the staff report, and as a condition of approval, we're recommending that be changed to match the other 3 sides, which is board and batt siding. You also see the 2 different roofing materials. Stained metal seam roof, those are the ones with the sort of predominant vertical lines that are on the second floor, and then the rear portion of the first floor. And then on the front portion of the first floor, you see composition shingles. And staff in the staff report believes, again, that's, I don't know if it's necessarily a mistake or just odd that you have 2 different materials on the first floor. We would recommend that the lower floor be all composition shingles and that the upper floor be standing metal seam. A couple of other design comments had to do with the fascia boards, the size of the fascia board. It's not clear, or the window trim, how large it is. We're recommending it be a minimum of 2x. One of the things I didn't note in the site plan, which is here, is the 10-foot side yard is not on the garage side, it's on the opposite side. And we would recommend that a 3E be added that would switch that. We essentially just put the 10 foot on the garage and the 5 foot on the opposite side. Otherwise, they do have the adequate total area of side yard dimension. There's been a lot of discussion about, and I suspect why a lot of these people are here tonight, about the subdivision itself and how it's been progressing and the improvements and the construction and a lot of other related things. There are 3 very specific conditions of approval that affect what will happen on this lot, and I will just read them for the public. There needs to be a subdivision improvement and maintenance agreement in place prior to the construction of a new home in phase 2. And that's a process that goes to the council for approval. And then there needs to be, all roads have to be constructed and paved prior to issuance of any building permit. Again, that's lot 18, which is part of phase 2. The fire department and the city engineer can amend that, but typically that's what the city has required. And then lastly, the map itself that creates this lot has to be recorded. Right now, it's just a tentative map, and when you record the final map, that becomes part of the record, and that needs to take place before a house building permit could be issued for this lot. So there's some things in place that are trying to ensure that anything that happens on this lot is done in an orderly fashion, and that they don't and can't begin construction of this home until these improvements have been made. Doesn't really affect phase 1. Again, phase 1 is separate, stands on its own. We have been working with the applicant's engineer. I don't know if the people have been noticing that they've been regrading the site to deal with the fact that there's been drainage problems on the properties to the north and south as a result of this project being built and raising the terrain. It has caused drainage problems for those 2 properties. As of last week, our city engineer and the engineer of record have indicated that the interim, and again, their interim steps to address the drainage have been satisfied. There'll be some more permanent ones done, but right now, the 2 engineers have agreed that this would, and if rain were to start tomorrow, would be enough to satisfy the drainage problems that occurred last winter while this project was under construction. And so, other than the change to condition 3 by adding a provision related to the side yard setbacks and the recommended changes to the facade of the building, staff is recommending approval of the design. With that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
I'm going to jump in with just one quick one. A subdivision improvement and maintenance agreement, what is that? I'm not familiar with.
Well, John can jump in too. It essentially says that all the improvements that are required will be installed, and then they bond for those, so that if for some reason they were to default, the city could go in and theoretically cash the bond and complete the improvements.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the subdivision improvement really is the linchpin for any project. All infrastructure, storm drains, streets, water, sewer, the joint trench for all utilities, any conditions, additional conditions on this project. As an example, there's a requirement by the engineer to put in a very small retaining wall on the backs of most of these properties. Until all those things are all satisfied, they cannot get a permit to actually move on the construction of it, unless there's an agreed upon remedy that the engineer and the applicant have.
John, is that the, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that the interim steps that you were mentioning, Dave, or is that separate from?
It's separate because it's phase 1.
Sorry, no, the retaining wall.
That's part of phase 1, and then ultimately it will be also part of phase 2. But those again would be being put in place before the construction could commence on lot 18.
A perspective and something that I know that some folks are gonna get up and talk about tonight. The only way that you get the final improvements is by having the subdivision improvement agreement in place, and for them to move forward with it. They cannot get a building permit until they have the subdivision improvement agreement, which includes those final improvements. The drainage has to meet the conditions off of the properties, and the other thing, and I can tell you, there's a lot of back and forth going on various things. And we realize that people are frustrated about this project. Staff is frustrated about it. We deal with an inordinate amount of time that we're dealing with this. And I know that we're going to take a little bit of grief here tonight, but here's the deal. Unless the project moves forward, they aren't going to get any of this stuff done. That's part of the conundrum that we find ourselves in. And unless, I mean, the remedy for many of these folks is, this is a private property right now. There's no map, there's no subdivision improvement agreement, there's nothing recorded on this. This is, right now, it is a private property dispute. But once it moves into the realm of the subdivision improvement agreement and these conditions,
It's then a city
it does.
issue because then you're,
Because the subdivision improvement agreement is between the developer, the property owner, and the city. Until then, we don't have all the leverage that's necessary to go and do this, including bonding, or at least some type of a letter of credit.
other questions? Is the applicant here have anything you'd like to add?
Their representative is.
And
here.
you're good? Okay, we do have a number of people who would like to speak, so at 6:40, we will open it to public comment on this, this application. We'll start with Matt Ricky, I'll get it right.
Been said many different ways.
Yes.
My name's Matt Bricky, 760 Hemingway Street. A lot of the things I was gonna bring up, you talked about there, but I'm still gonna talk about some of them. Request for the permit for Chris Williams to build another half-built house should be denied. We've been living down there. The Hemingway Street's been torn up. I've lived there my whole life in that house at that location. And I've never seen Hemingway Street look worse. And I'm gonna talk about phase one. I know this doesn't pertain to it. I'm gonna talk about phase one to show past construction practices that Mr. Williams has used. And for my credibility, I work in road construction for 30 years, do soil stabilization. I work in subdivisions like this every day, from San Jose to Chico, from Nevada to San Francisco. That's what I do for a living. And a job this size, we can treat it, the contractor will rock it and pave it in no more than 3 weeks, maximum. That's normal trends. And what we've been dealing with there, he's got the 3 houses, one's maybe halfway done, the other one's maybe a little behind that. The third one's been sitting framed out, bare wood for 2 months. I've driven back to the houses behind the schools. There's been 20 houses built, finished, ready to move into in that amount of time, 2 months, 3 months. So for him to request another permit, another phase of the project, I went and drove out there tonight. There's some sidewalks in there. There's some corner sidewalks not poured. They poured those sidewalks probably, if I remember right, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Now it's after they hauled out the first sidewalks that they poured in dump trucks because they didn't pour them thick enough or the right slope. So I think this is a perfect time to stop and have Mr. Williams focus on phase one and get the infrastructure complete and finish those houses he built so that they're worth something in case he decides to leave. Right now, we're gonna end up with a subdivision that's half built with 4 houses that are half built, and the city will probably own those, or whoever comes along to pick them up in foreclosure. So I don't think it'd be a wise decision to add a 4th house to that development until the first 3 are done, complete, finished, so that they have a chance of being sold. So that's where I stand. And then there's one other issue I wanted to bring up was the drainage problem that we talked about when we did the design review on phase one. I got up here and spoke about the retaining walls need to be in there. And you all agreed that that needed to be done. But the poor fortune of that is that he was allowed to build those 3 houses without installing any of the retaining walls or the drainage systems along the fence lines. And that's where all your flooding took place. And it's still not done yet. And I know you need to wait for an agreement, but that seems a little bit, behind the cart. we're gonna go through another winter and have more flooding happen, so I think it'd be good to stop things right now and minimize the mess. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sheila Carvajal?
For allowing me to speak. I'm representing the Winter Cemetery District, and we are on the west side of phase 2 of the subdivision. And we had an enormous amount of flooding, and because there was no drainage, it went into 2 or 3 neighbors' yards from the cemetery. I know they've gone out and they've retrenched for a temporary drainage, but it's not gonna work. We still have some areas, there's 12 inches of dirt up next to the cemetery fence line, and that's not going to prevent the water to flow out. They've got one little area that's about maybe 12 inches wide, that is a little ditch, and it's supposed to flow into the 2 ditches that they did on the south side and the west side. And the thing of it is the area from the cemetery is lower than the temporary ditches. It's not going to go into that. And it's not going to drain out. They've got to do something else before you approve lot 18. And I've got pictures if you guys want to see them, but it's going to be a mess again. And I don't know why, to begin with, why it was approved to have the pads so high next to existing neighborhoods. And I think that needs to be considered. If it was your property and this happened to you, you would be screaming, as we should. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Bristow?
I'm Joe Bristow. I live at 405 Fair Place. And the bottom left-hand corner, my property is next to lot 19. And first I want to say to Dave Dowswell, you couldn't be more wrong. If it started raining tomorrow, this interim ditch that they dug with the dirt on the other side, of the ditch, if we had any kind of rain like we had 3 atmospheric rivers last year, November, January, and February, with 2, 3, and 4 inches in 24 hours, and my property flooded 3 times. I had a river of Chris Williams mud coming under my fence and around and out, diverted out to the street. If we had a rain like that tomorrow, that ditch would fill up with the dirt they dug out and be absolutely worthless. They have to do something about that ditch. I agree with John that to move forward on the project, we have to move forward. At this point, I would love to see a 2-story house looking into my yard. I mean, if it had lawns and cement and all that dirt was taken care of. This temporary fix, it needs some work. They did a backhoe along the whole south border and threw the dirt this way. They did a backhoe along the west border where the cemetery is and threw the dirt this way. That dirt's got to go on the other side. And the ditch is lower in the bottom corner than it is in the street. It's just going to fill up with water. It needs some work. And I know Alex at L&M is going to do an inspection, and I'm hoping he's going to see that it needs to be repaired or fixed before the rains come. I'm looking at an email here from the city manager to half of the people involved. I don't know why all 6 of the neighbors aren't included on this email list, but only 3 out of 6 are. And it says, please note conditions 10, 11, and 12, which require completion of subdivision improvements, and then in parentheses, which include permanent drainage, public improvements, and final map before a permit for this lot 18 is issued. So how do we know that? Why isn't that in writing? If you look at number 10, it's about improvement and maintenance agreement. And number 11 is about roads. Number 12 is about a tentative map that says final or parcel. I don't know how a tentative map can be final. But nowhere in 10, 11, and 12 in writing does it say that we're gonna get a permanent drainage solution with a stem wall, with a block wall, with grading at 1% away from the neighbors like was promised by Chris Williams, with a berm and a ditch. The only thing that's happened right now behind phase 2 is a ditch, and a ditch that's dug wrong. And it's upsetting because I don't want to go through the same thing and be out there in the middle of the night trying to save a bunch of mud and dirt and water coming through the swimming pool and everything into my house. And as far as this analysis goes, when I asked Dave, who, the community development department, who he was, because I don't know when they sign something and it says, I move that the City of Winters Planning Commission approve design. I mean, I guess that's staff when it says, I move. But I don't agree with a lot of things in this analysis. For one thing, it says right here, overall, the proposed design is compatible with the design of the homes in the immediate neighborhood. The house to the south, which is a large custom home, has a stucco finish with a tile roof. If we're talking about phase 2 and lot 18, the house to the south is mine. It's a small one-story house, 12 to 1,400 square feet, like 90% of the houses in that neighborhood. That's not compatible. This house is going to be 3 times the size and square footage, 3,600 square feet and 2 stories high. When he's talking about the house that's a large custom house with a stucco finish, he's got to be talking about Don Jordan's, which is immediately south of phase 1. Nothing to do with phase 2. I can't understand why they would say that the whole neighborhood is compatible to this design, because it's not. And I get excited because if you've been through what I've been through 3 times last winter, and then we promise after promise, and Chris Williams actually called me in the morning, the day that we were gonna have a walkthrough with the city council and L&M, and he said, look, Joe, he says, we're gonna have, in the next couple of weeks, we're gonna have everything regraded away from the south border at 1%. We're gonna have a ditch dug, a real ditch dug, and a berm. And that's gonna hopefully hold us through until he can get the money to pay off some of his bills and get this project running. And if he thinks he's gonna sell a 3,600 square foot house on a 12,000 foot lot, and someone's gonna pay 700 or 800 grand sight unseen so he can pay some bills, fine. As long as those bills go to that permanent retaining wall and keep the water out of our properties. Thanks.
Thank you. Lisa Valerano? Caesar, excuse me, I misread that.
All right, well, I guess, Mr. Bricky summed it up, Joe summed it up. I'm Joe's neighbor at 403 Park Place. Went through the same experience that Joe did, not as bad. My patio is completely demolished, nice pavers, spent a ton of money on sods, ton of money on landscape, it's all ruined. Now I gotta dig it all up and do it all over again. On whose dime? Mine. On whose time? Mine that I don't have. So we gotta figure this out. We're gonna fight it every step of the way. We're not gonna let this go on. We can't let it go on.
Did you ask Mr. Williams to
So
cover the cost?
no, I put in a petition for a complaint, just like Joe did. I never heard squawk about it. I said, fine, I'm not that bad off, not as bad as Joe, but, it was ignored. I just figured, I heard the guy didn't have money, I'm on my own, So, I definitely have receipts of, parts, pieces of parts and that I purchased, and, I can certainly, bring them up to his attention, but I doubt it'll go anywhere.
Thank you. So commissioners, Dave, why don't we bring bring you back up. I'm gonna guess we have some questions.
Yeah, and I can only say, and John saw the same emails I saw. I have to rely on the engineers. This is not my area of expertise. If they believe that the situation is such,
I need to close the public hearing at 6:54 before I bring you back. Thank you, Vice Chair.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. When I say staff in general, it's not just me.
Yeah.
It's engineering, public works, police, fire.
Is L&M Engineering
They're the engineers of record for the subdivision.
For the subdivision.
On behalf of
Okay.
Mr. Williams.
Okay.
And then Alan represents us, and Alex is filling in, I guess, for Brian Benino in this capacity for L&M. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm sure all of the things these people have said are completely valid. A few times that I went out there last year during the rain, it looked like a mess to me. And I know Mr. Jordan had me on his property at least on 2 occasions when there was water, standing water. So, the extent that a non-trained engineer looks at it, I clearly can see some of the things that they talked about.
Questions? Yes.
Just a couple of them. So, as I understand it, he's basically asking for permission to build the house, and city is basically saying, you're gonna have to build all the things you promised first, the road, some of the drainage, and those kinds of things, and you don't get to build your house till you build all the improvements and do the bonding component. So so just from kind of a process point, is it the city, he needs to do this so that he can move forward with his phase, the city wants him to do the things he needs to do so that they have some way to do enforcement on the property? Or is there another kind of enforcement where if you don't move forward and he can't move forward with any of his improvements, then the current situation would continue and the city would lack enforcement capacity? Is that my understanding?
Well, I mean, and I've done this, and John's been around it a long time too. I've seen subdivisions where people have walked away and you have to try to collect the improvement bond or the letter of credit. It's not easy. I won't tell anybody that it is, because the bonding companies are gonna fight it tooth and nail. But that's the point of the whole agreement, is that the city in theory can get the money and go in there and have the work completed, at least to the point where it's not impacting the neighbors. Whether we can get the houses built, as the other gentleman said, they'd likely go to foreclosure and somebody would buy them in an unfinished state. And they would buy either those 3 houses or the whole subdivision or portions thereof.
John?
So tonight's design and site plan review for Lot 18. Phase 2 right now is nothing. There's a tentative map on the site. Very difficult to have any leverage on them at this point. The only way that the city really gets our leverage is when we have actual agreements, a subdivision improvement agreement. Unequivocally, they cannot build this house until all the other things are sufficed. They have every right to submit this application tonight for the design and site plan. They do not have the right to build the house until the conditions are done. We felt the pain, we get the pain from all the neighbors in that neighborhood on this constantly. And we've been pulling as many things as we can, but right now, for phase 2, it is a private property dispute. They have every right to pursue litigation against Mr. Williams and the issues that are going on. Ms. Carvajal's right. The cemetery drains onto this property. The one thing that we've been trying to do is get them to move forward with some of the improvements, so that when the cemetery really doesn't have drainage in this section. Their drainage is it drains onto this property. there are, there are measures that they can put in to actually get the drainage to occur. But, you know, I can tell you, from the staff perspective, as this came in, you know, did we know that this was not going to be a great meeting? Absolutely. we did. And with Mr. Williams and getting these things done, he is exercising his right. He has a right as a property owner to do this. For the city to necessarily violate his right to be able to submit this type of an application, we can't do that. But in this case, for him to actually move forward, it creates an ability of leverage to hopefully get the things done. You know, we can't comment on so many of the things that people are alleging. We're going off of what the engineers are giving us on this. They have been upgrading on the property. And, you know, it's a very difficult situation.
Pat?
So, I've got a couple of things. One of them is that, apparently water went from phase 1 onto at least Don Jordan's property, right? But that was phase 1. Right? So what I'm wondering is why didn't something get done about that, that was already an approved project and nothing was done about that? How are we gonna be sure that something's done about the rest of it?
You know, I guess we can't necessarily comment where the water was coming from. I can tell you that as some of the other neighbors are pointing out, probably the biggest problems have been in the phase 2 area.
Because it was created
At the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
The issue had to do with, mostly with, and I think Joe would agree, it's the drainage coming off of the cemetery that created the water and the flow going into a lot of the properties.
No, I disagree totally with that.
Anyway, my second question is relating to the cemetery. I thought that there was a law in California that you can't drain water from your property onto somebody else's property. I know that cemetery's been there a long time, it's low ground and everything, but it seemed like the cemetery ought to deal with some drainage issues as well. I'm just saying, you know, if a lot of the water's coming from there, where's it gonna go?
There was a lot of water there, as Joe pointed out. We had 3 100-year events that came back to back. And Joe would know because he's not only Joe the Butcher, he's Joe the Weatherman. But my understanding is that it wasn't 4 inches in 24 hours. I think it was 4 inches in 4 hours. And that's what caused
Yes,
a lot of.
other comments?
I guess I kind of wanted to walk through it a bit because when we went through this process last time, like Matt said, the leveling was brought to our attention, the fact that these were going to be raised. And the answer was, the engineer said it's okay. All right, and that was the basics of it. And I assume that meant the engineer said it's okay because once you have all these facilities put in place, there's going to be proper drainage. So I think as we're working through it, I think we need to distinguish between what happens when there's proper drainage in place, and if it's, again, if that solves the issue, that's one way. The other thing would be, what if it doesn't, right? What if the analysis wasn't done properly? And so far, it seems to be that it's a matter of not executing and putting the facilities in. And I think the dilemma is, well, how do you enforce, how do you get this to some point where there can be some sort of enforcement mechanism against the owner? And so I guess my first question would be, did we have a similar agreement for phase 1 that we're asking of in phase 2? Understanding that, we weren't anticipating any of this, so maybe it wouldn't have been considered, but.
So the phase 2 really is the bulk of this entire project. In phase 1, you've got some very simple improvements that go in. None of it really include drainage improvements. There needs to be grading, for those, basically, we're talking about the 5 lots on Hemingway. So phase 1 is a completely different animal than phase 2. Phase 2 actually has streets and drainage and storm drains and things. Phase 1 is basically an active tying into existing utilities and the like. Pretty simple. Phase 2 is the bulk of this project and yes, we have a subdivision improvement agreement for phase 1, but it's peanuts compared to what the phase 2 subdivision improvement agreement is.
Okay, so okay, so there is.
Phase 1's 2 feet higher than adjoining lots. There's a substantial grade difference.
Cause
Well, I'm not, I mean, I can't add, I mean, this gentleman's correct in what he just said, but I can't add to what John says. The grading change that's occurred on the first 5 lots is somewhat impacting the 2 homes, John Jordan and I believe it's Mr. Martin to the north. But as John said, it's all coming out of the grading, overall grading, which included phase 2.
As I sort of hear this, it seems that, you know, when you're thinking about a subdivision, it's all gonna sort of move expeditiously through phase 1 and phase 2, and that's kind of not what we've had occur here. So the improvements which would have gone in haven't caught up, and indeed, phase 1 isn't built at this point either. So I guess my big concern is when if you give them approval to do the house, knowing they have to do all of the infrastructure, but they can't make the lift there either. So then what is recourse? Is it simply remain a private property dispute?
Yeah, I mean, they won't get to build the house on lot 18 until they've resolved all these issues.
In the past, things we were dealing with, that we approved had a time limit on them. Does this involve any time limit?
Well, the design review does, but it's
Well,
a year.
The time, I think that Mr. Williams has until sometime in the summer, June, July, August, whatever the plan, to submit his final map.
Okay, and if that's not submitted?
Theoretically, it expires, so
Okay.
it reverts back to having a non-entitled piece of property.
So we have a raised piece of property that's just
Non-entitled.
flooding, okay? Okay, so it does have it has a 1 year.
Well, no,
It's got to-
tentative maps typically have 3 to 6 years, depending on whether you get extensions and other lengthening approvals, and even longer than that in some instances. We're fast approaching 3 years since it was originally approved.
Yep.
You know, so theoretically, as John said, he's got about a 6 to 9 month window to record the final map or come back to the city and ask for an extension, and the city's under no obligation to extend it.
Part of the problem is the distinction between phase 1 and phase 2 is, you know, kind of artificial. Because the project came to us with the idea, I think it was, we made the distinction for the benefit of the developer. And it made sense of to an extent at the time. But we didn't anticipate that this was gonna be the path forward. And so it's a little bit troublesome for us to move on phase 2 without having the situation on phase 1 in our minds. And so I think this is a lot more complicated than just a regular design review. That being said, what's the negative outcome? You approve the design, if the solution isn't fixed, the house doesn't get built.
And if you
If
don't
you
approve
don't
the
do it,
design,
it doesn't.
it doesn't fix the problem.
And then he's also, yeah, if we don't approve it, he's under no obligation to do a subdivision improvement maintenance agreement, and it can just sit
Sounds like
for a long
blackmail.
time.
The design review entitlement doesn't provide us anything that we can use to leverage a position on the rest of the problems. it's a presumption that all the other problems get solved, and when they do, then he's got the approval to move forward with that house.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Process? And I don't know, so I'm asking you. Is there anything that precludes us from saying we'd like to know more about how phase one is getting resolved before we take up phase two and table this and get a report on
Nothing.
phase one?
You're well within your rights. I mean, I can't see everybody behind me, and I didn't look at all their faces, but I don't believe either one of these people behind this is one of the engineers. And I'm, again, out of my league, so without somebody from Langenauer Mickle and Alan here, from our engineering firm. I'm sorry, Brian is here. I didn't see Brian walk in. I can't answer that, but maybe Mr. Bonito can.
Come on, Brian, jump up and join the party.
So do you have to open the public hearing before I speak?
Well, he can reopen the public hearing.
Well, send the chair to staff to the city.
Should represent.
Yeah, here's,
Can I say one more thing?
yeah, Pat, before you.
So I think what we're saying, or we're suggesting is that we would like to see some, more progress, in all aspects of phase one, completing the houses, doing whatever drainage can be done. Something showing, I guess you'd say, good faith on phase one before we, do anything on phase two. Is that kind of what you were suggesting?
I'm suggesting that I think before you would move forward with taking up the consideration of phase two, we would get a report on how at least the drainage component was progressing on phase one, because the proviso, the idea of allowing them to move forward with phase one for the developers' benefit didn't actually mean that meant you get to flood your neighbors. So it would be good to know that what their fix is actually gonna work, so we have some confidence in being able to think about phase two.
Is there anything, Brian, before we, is there anything that's not been done on phase one that was supposed to be done?
We're up here taking the beating.
Okay, it's such a small part of it. I mean, I don't know if there's any retaining walls or whatever should have been done on phase one.
Zero.
Yeah, and it, Brian, yes.
Brian Benito with Langenauer Mickle. So basically, I think Commissioner Contreras said it bluntly and correctly, is the grading improvements were not complete before those last rains. So we have all our lots 1 through 5. Basically, the final grading of those would include side yard swales and directed water out to Hemingway. Basically, for Don Jordan, all those lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slope to the south. John Jordan, his house is on the south. So if the side yard swales were in, they would have cut off this drainage. And plus the retaining wall between Jordan and lot 5 was not constructed. So there were some issues there. And then the partial grading on lot 16 back there was not directed towards the street. So water was able to build up on lot 16 there and go towards Jordan. So basically the improvements, some of the inner improvements that they made was they took lot 5 and sloped the drainage from to basically graded the lot at 1%. Okay, they haven't cut in any the permanent drainage swales for lots 1 through 4 yet. Usually on a subdivision, those get cut in after you do the house because you can't work around the swales and things like that. But it is potentially you could have those cut in now. We could add that to some of the requirements to make sure no additional water goes to Don Jordan's house. And then for phase 2, basically we requested that he regrade all those lots because there wasn't anything done, so they all slope towards the streets at 1%. So the lot is sloping there. There is a lot of dirt associated with the trenches that were dug that has been mentioned, and that's correct, that's out there. And then as far as drainage from the cemetery, you're still,
I mean, it's been that way forever, so there was still an obligation for the subdivision to pick up some of that drainage, because apparently it did go through the old orchard. So there is a mechanism for picking it up, but again, it's not built. So things there could be cleaned up better to make sure it didn't flood on the southwest corner there. You know, all we can do is ask ourselves and tell them we need to do those things, either get done or don't get done, and they haven't got done, you know, very quickly, obviously. But I think we're confident once things are done, they should be greatly improved from last year so far because of the sloping of the lock grading that's been done and the other trenches, but until the
The
swollen,
sloping was done after last winter.
it was done the last few months, yes.
What's sloping?
Was it certified?
Sloping.
It hasn't been certified yet, no.
We don't know it's sloping. It's not proven.
Well, we can cert it, well,
That's
it's like
still
anything
dirt.
else.
Work's been done, but
Yeah, it hasn't been certified. I mean, we're kind of like the city. We're making sure things keep going.
Were they done by grading contractors or home builders?
I don't, supposedly the contractor's licensed.
just let him speak.
Yeah, the contractor's licensed because the city checked that out. The city engineer checked that out. My understanding, they went through a few things before they had a license.
Okay.
But no, the pads have not been verified. for the grading.
Other comments, questions, suggestions?
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
I think my suggestion would be that we table the approval of phase 2 and get a report on their progress on phase 1 for the drainage.
I'll add one suggestion for future projects. It's not a it really needed to occur here after thinking of it after the fact. It doesn't usually happen this way. But potentially for some of these infill subdivisions, I mean, basically, if you follow the California grading code, you have to raise the lots and the water has to slope away from the lots at 1%. That's the California building code. That's why the lots are up, is associated with the code. But one thing you could do is require them to build the retaining walls as a first order of work before any formal grading took place. So anything like these ones here, that way he has to put the money in, whoever the developer has to put the money in, get the walls in, prevent the issues we've had here, and then you can move forward with the grading. So that's something to consider on future infield subdivisions where you could do that type of condition.
Yeah.
Where have money come up front, the walls get built, because right now a lot of money was spent on the other things instead of the walls. And in retrospect, the walls maybe should have been built first.
My suggestion would be a motion, and I would add that we'd like to make sure that the grading was certified for slope.
So you want to make that as a motion?
It is.
Okay, so we have a motion to table the request for phase 2, to get a report on the phase 1 work, on whether it is completed or fully completed.
One question on that. So the report, is that, who does that report?
City.
It's gonna come from the engineers.
With the engineers, and it would certify that the slope was done and conformed, and that, and get a progress report on how they're dealing with drainage.
The only thing for the people that are here tonight, I would continue it to the December 10th meeting. If I can say with certainty, I can get a hold of all these people. And if for some reason we don't have that report and in time for that meeting, then I'll let these people know not to show up and it won't be discussed on the agenda that night.
Yes, I think that's, yes, you wouldn't want to put it off. I think
Right.
December
So I mean,
10th.
hopefully we can get an answer between now and December 10th, which is your next scheduled meeting.
So it would be continued to the December 10th meeting.
That avoids having to put another notice in the newspaper.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions or anything about that? All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion passes. Okay, thank you, everybody, for being here. We will now go on to the second.
Mr. Chairman, if I can real quick, it might be helpful too for that next meeting, to have a little bit more than what we had tonight. I mean, I know the scope was the design review and stuff, but I know we're gonna get they're gonna come, they want answers, and so we need answers, I think, a little bit beyond just the reports, which I think are fundamental to the decision that's made that night. But they need to see a path forward to resolving their issues. And if it's not something the city can do, so they know full well that they're gonna have to do it via some other way, but, I mean, they need solutions, because that's not, they can't flood their backyard, that's just not acceptable. And I don't think even the developer thinks it's acceptable, but, I mean, rainy season's upon us, and they need answers.
Thank you. Right. You need these guys. Second item of the evening. Dave Boswell, city staff.
Why are we not getting out far? Okay, back. Okay, the item before you tonight, you discussed at your last meeting, and at that meeting, after quite a bit of discussion, you continued it to tonight. And what's before you tonight is 3 entitlements, one of which you are the final say, and unless it's appealed. And that's the design review of the homes that are being proposed for the property that's referred to as the LDS subdivision. Then the other 2, you're in a position of recommending to the city council. One is approval of the tentative map, and the other is approval of a zoning overlay, PD zoning overlay, which allows them to vary a number of the standards that are part of the zoning code for this particular zone. And in the staff report, the discussion centers around the tentative map. See if I can get back to it. One of the big items that was discussed at quite a bit of length is the ability for fire trucks, and in this case, garbage trucks, but we were most interested in fire trucks, being able to get in and out of the subdivision. Typically, when the lots 6 and 7, which is the corner, 7 and 8, I think it is, at the corner, you'd normally have what's called a knuckle. I've taken this out of the presentation from the last meeting. But that's sort of a bulb out like Mr. Adams has in front of his home, and that allows for a fire truck to be able to make that turn. He's still here, so I won't say that Mr. Benino's not here. What's been done is they've redesigned it to sort of have a kind of a hybrid between the normal street width and a knuckle. And if you look at the area where the lots turn, you can see the road width, or at least I think you can see the road width is wider than the rest of the road width. And that was done to accommodate a fire truck being able to make the turning movement while cars are parked on the street to safely exit the subdivision. The green area in the cul-de-sac is a similar situation. I didn't put up the slide tonight, but essentially if you can see where the car is on lot 5, all the way around to the car on, I forget what lot that is, that whole area would be posted no parking, mainly because it's a large portion of which is the emergency vehicle access that leads through from the church property through and into this cul-de-sac, and that provides a secondary access for a fire emergency or some sort of emergency where the main street would be blocked off. And, when we were talking about the DVA, some of the issues that came up were how would you sort of regulate who uses it? And city manager mentioned that on the cul-de-sac side of the EVA, you would have simply removable bollards. And so pedestrians, in theory, could access it. What I talked about in the staff report is that on the church side, they could actually have a gate system in place, which you often see at gated subdivisions, where the fire department has access to the ability to open that gate. And so that would preclude, in theory, kids getting through, but it would allow the fire department to have that access when they need it in case of an emergency. There's also discussion about having to record an access easement on the church property. There is indication that the church is aware of that and that they know that that's one of the things that will be needed as part of the tentative map moving forward. The next issue I talked about in the staff report, and really the crux of really tonight's discussion, I think, is centers around design. So as was said at the DRC and also at the last planning commission meeting, the applicants will be here tonight to represent their side of it. Is the idea behind this subdivision was to create a smaller, single-story product that would be theoretically sold at a lower base point than the products that are currently being built. And the idea behind that was that it would make it possibly available to people right now who can't afford the houses that are being sold in that greater area. I think, speaking for the two commissioners, I think they were supportive of that. They liked the idea of having a lower base price point for houses. And that's sort of where the discussion, I guess, ended as far as from staff's design standpoint. Almost all of the trim was taken off the houses that you see in the current subdivision that they're building. These houses are very basic in design. They're very similar in design. There's a total of 18 lots, 9 elevations. All 9 elevations are proposed to have the same roof style, the same roof pitch. If you look at Plan 1 and Plan 2, they basically look the same from the straight on. This is Plan 1, and Plan 2 is almost identical. Plan 3 is also very similar in their look. The only difference is the door's been moved, from between the windows over to the side and the entry, but the basic pop-out feature is the same. There's very little, if any, trim. There's no trim on the side or rear of the properties. There is no trim proposed for any of the windows or doors except on the front elevation. There's no veneers, there's no wainscoting, there's none of those things that you would typically associate with the other homes that are being built in the immediate area. And that's really where, again, staff's focus is in the staff report. There clearly are design guidelines, which the applicant mentioned it the last time he was asking that the commission waive, talking about some of these items that I've just mentioned. And the fact that when designing homes, you need to ensure that those types of features are included. In the staff report, there's a number of bullet points that we talk about the specifics of how you could make these houses more attractive design-wise without having to make them all sort of the same. Not every house would have to have a wainscoting, not every house would have to have a veneer of some sort or the same sort of treatment. But they could have combinations of roof styles, finishes, and other amenities that would distinguish them. The lot on the corner and the lot as you enter the subdivision have side elevations that will be facing the street. One will face Anderson, the other will face inward into the subdivision. If you look at your elevations, they're blank walls. They're literally blank. The only thing that they have on them is the attic vent that's in the ventilated roof. The concern that the commission has voiced in the other subdivisions is that when you have a corner lot, you don't have a flat wall, which the design specifically discouraged facing a major street like Anderson Avenue. Minor things that we talked about is that there is no Plan 4, which is the lot that's the unique lot that's sort of at the beginning of the cul-de-sac. At some point, I'm presuming that we would see that. I'm guessing it would be similar in how it's treated as far as the roof and materials and everything else, but again, that's just a guess. There is no landscaping or fencing plan. As we've done in other subdivisions, we require that of the developer. In these newer subdivisions, we've required metal posts for the fencing so that the fences don't rot out as quickly as they do with wooden posts. The last part of this is the planned development overlay zone. I don't think I have any of that in this presentation. They're asking for a number of deviations from the standards in order to accomplish building on these smaller lots. And in general, staff is supportive of all of their requests. I think the only thing that we talked about, a couple of things, is try to put the 10-foot side yards next to the garage where possible, try to create 10-foot side yards where it's possible. On the rear yard setbacks, they've shown you, and you have an attachment that shows what the potential to add patio covers. I believe on one of the patios covers, they actually proposed what could be a 400 square foot patio cover, which staff felt was somewhat excessive. And that to maintain a larger setback from the rear property line would be more beneficial than necessarily allowing the potential for a homeowner who's already buying a small lot that's undersized to build a 400 foot patio cover. Putting it in context again for where these houses are located, 6 of the 7 lots, as you enter back up to the Heartland subdivision, which these people own. 6 of them back up to the church, and then the others back up to the schools. So the traditional setting where you might be affecting your neighbors really only comes into play with the homes that they're trying to sell as part of the Heartland subdivision. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this aspect of the entitlement along with the map actually has to go on to the council, and the council has to act on those. That's it. With that, I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions?
Save my questions and comments for after public hearing.
A quick one, the homes that are gonna be on the corner lots, wouldn't there be a fence around one side of them?
There would be a fence on the side yard, so you'd only see about half of that area. You'd see probably the upper portion of the windows and then the rest above that.
Why don't we open up to public comment, and then we'll hear from the folks, and then we'll deal with questions and such and go from there. 7:31, we'll open up public comment. Kate Laddish.
Thank you. Kate Laddish, 400 Morgan Street, number 21. And I'd like to start by thanking the commission for their discussion last time and to city staff for having it available on YouTube, especially about the uniformity of the design the first time around. I really appreciate the comments that the commission made at that meeting. So I'll start with that point that I'm concerned about, if there's real uniformity in the design and especially with the roof lines, that ends up having the feel of a tract home neighborhood. And Winters has worked really hard to not end up with something like that. And so I appreciate that is something that the commission has been considering and that staff's been talking with the applicant about. And I encourage that consideration to continue. I salute an applicant thinking about how to have more diversity in home price within Winters housing stock. I noted in the packet that the applicant will be able to sell these at whatever price the market will bear, and that my understanding is that they're not in a way truly affordable housing in that way because there's no regulation. And I'm sure that Commissioner Baker would be able to speak to that much more eloquently than I'd be able to. But I'm concerned that if we approve something, if we let an applicant not follow the design review guidelines in order to have something that they are saying will be less expensive, are we really actually going to end up with increasing our affordable housing stock, or do we just have some homes, like basically in a neighborhood that's not built to our good design review guidelines? And so I just have some concerns about that. Looking at the emergency vehicle access, is there also a way that people on that cul-de-sac in that neighborhood can use that emergency vehicle access to get out if the other way is blocked? I mean, basically, I'm looking for emergency exit as well as access for emergency vehicles. I don't know if there's a magic way that the gate that's described in there can be designed so people can get out in the case of an emergency, but if 18 houses are built in there, that's a fair number of people, and so I'd like to make sure that they can all get out if there's a problem at the one end of that street. Looking at the site map, I wasn't sure if there was a parking strip, and I noted that there's one area where there's not going to be sidewalk. And so I was thinking about ADA access and considerations And if there's not a parking strip and if the driveways are going across the sidewalks, basically, if you end up with a situation where the driveways are cutting out through the sidewalks and you have a bunch of slopes in the sidewalk, it is really, really difficult to traverse that using a wheelchair or a walker or probably pushing a stroller, but I have less experience with that. And so since these aren't gonna be alley loaded, and if there is not a parking strip or planting strip, so I request that we find a way for the driveways to not divot down through the sidewalks. And whether that's with those, I don't know how you describe the curbs, but aren't the hard edged curves, but rolled curves. It's a term to art. A rolled curb, something like that, just because it's really difficult to traverse the sidewalks where the driveways cut. And the last comment is with the increasing the percentage of each lot that is built. I would just like to make sure that since we're going to be increasing the percentage of area relative to other neighborhoods in which we've made the surfaces impermeable, that we account for the increase in peak stormwater runoff, which is certainly that's something that's been on everybody's minds, including this evening. And so just because if we pave an area or put a house on it, the water can't seep into it. And so whether that's with using semi-permeable pavers or how we want to do it, I just want to make sure that that we don't end up having a surprise with peak stormwater runoff with increased coverage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for public comment? 7:36, we'll close the public comments. Questions, or you want to have, why don't we hear from the applicant? Let's hear from the applicants and then we'll have questions.
Good evening, I'm Cal Packard with Crown Community. I'm gonna just go over a few items, then Brian's gonna come up and address a few items, and then Cam's gonna finish up with the PD items that staff needs to go over. I won't be going over the same stuff I went over last time. There are a few points that I do want to touch on again. I'll try to avoid being repetitious. All right. So if you recall, this is a map of the surrounding areas. There's 4 projects surrounding in the immediate vicinity of the LDS project. You can see the LDS is kind of toward the middle there. And then the yellow boxes represent other projects that have been approved in the last few years. And you can, I don't know if you can read the statistics on each one, or can we zoom in a little bit? There you go. So there's 4 projects one as close as across the street. The others are not any more than a quarter mile away from the LDS property. If you look at that, because that map, can you show us the back there? No, zoom out a little bit. If you look at the size of those lots, in comparison to the lots that have been approved and built, you can kind of see just visually, this map is to scale. You can see that these lots are actually a little bigger than what has been approved thus far in those other projects. The projects that have been approved in this immediate area have ranged from, the lot size have ranged from 2,600 to 4,500 square feet. Subject property is, average lot size is 4428. I want to mention just one item on the staff report. I'll just read it. The applicants are requesting approval to create lots as small as 4,428 square feet, which is less than the required 6,000 square feet interior lots and 7,000 square feet per corner lots due to the irregular shape of the property and to achieve their objective to provide a smaller and more affordable home. I went ahead and rewrote it in a different way, so you can appreciate the context of that statement. I'm gonna go ahead and read it to you. Another way to describe this would be, the applicants are requesting approval to create lots that are within very close proximity to 4 projects previously approved, which consisted of, combined is 182 lots that have an average lot size of 3625 square feet. Subject property's average lot size is 4428 square feet. All of these projects mentioned, not just ours, but all of them, do not meet the required 6,000 square foot interior lot size and 7,000 square foot corner lot size. So this project, being what it, sure, it's not 6,000 square feet, but it's 4428, but as an average, it's still, compared to the projects surrounding the neighborhood, or that this is subject property anyway, it's actually larger average lot size.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Mr. Chairman, is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's 2-part. Clarification on the cottages, because I thought those were affordable housing with restrictions on them. So I think it's a little bit, I don't want to say disingenuous, but
Yeah, well,
it's really apples and oranges, because if you wanted to come in and put restrictions on them, I think that changes the conversation. That being said, I understand what the other 3 projects
You
are
know,
there, but that one.
I got you on that. Okay, I appreciate that.
Sorry.
But okay, if you take those lots out of the
Alan,
equation.
if you wanted to make this all low and very low, income housing,
You can offer it, I'm good.
You know what, we sure wouldn't mind doing that. I'm sure the city would be willing to participate and subsidize that. Of course we would. Now, so if you, let's just take the cottages out, you're right, you're absolutely right. If you take the cottages out, let's see where our averages fall down. It might go up a little, but they're not gonna get anywhere near 6,000 square feet. In fact, the lots above for, Winter Highlands, those are only 3762 average lot size. The lots that are already developed, phase 1A, go lower a little bit. Those are actually average lot size are 4,500, so slightly larger. Anyhow, one of the biggest things that I'm proud of this project is the fact that they're wide, shallow lots. The difference I'm gonna explain is from our perspective, as a builder, we have never even developed anything with lots less than 50 feet wide. There's reasons behind that. I'll get to those in a second. And, you know, we're not a big builder. In 30 years, we built 1,200 homes. But we've never developed anything less than 50 feet. Now, someday it's possible we might, but there are reasons why we don't do the narrow, small lot design, like on these surrounding projects. Those lots range anywhere from, again, I'll take the cottages out, okay? 43 feet wide lot size. Compared to these lots that we have, if you want to zoom out a little bit, you can just see those are 60 feet wide. The reason I point that out, the curb appeal on the homes, Cam is going to address the actual homes themselves, but the curb appeal is greatly enhanced when you drive into and again, coming from me, I'm not Dave Doswell. I'm not a planner, I'm a builder. I know driving into a neighborhood when everything is very congested and tight and there's very minimal parking, it gives you a different feel for the neighborhood versus wide, expansive lots with not a lot of congestion. The lots that we have, the 18 here, are going to have that. You're going to drive in, you're going to have 50, 60 foot wide lots versus 43. So the appearance of the neighborhood, the homes, everything, all of that combined makes a difference. Go to the next picture. As an example, again, I'm using cottages, sorry about that. But, you know, you can see what happens is we have minimal parking. So it always looks congested. Go to the next picture. There's, Winter's Highlands Phase 1A. You can see those are the 43-foot wide lots. For the next picture. And as you can see, where are you gonna park? Not a lot of space between those driveways. So anyhow, that's one point. One other item I wanted to bring up was the EVA. The EVA, mentions an electronically operated gate. It's the type you see in a gated community. If that's what you guys need, we certainly will do that. But, you know, I would have to question that only because of what's happened in the recent past with PG&E, many times disrupting power. I'm not a fireman either, but I know that if there's an emergency and if that EVA ever was to be used, may never be used. We don't know that. But if they ever had to use it, and it just so happened that PG&E had cut off power, and they have to get out their truck and get a sawzall out and cut out the gate, that takes out a lot of time, precious seconds, minutes to get to an emergency. I don't think they'd want to do that. I think a very simple solution is what you see everywhere. What do they call them, knock box, something like that. The biggest thing, if you look at the area at the EVA, see the bubbled area? It's all concrete. There's no paving there. You had a gate that slid on wheels, guaranteed to open. There's not anything that's gonna prevent that from being a situation where, oh, we didn't have PG&E, so it took us an extra 5 minutes to get in. I don't know if that's the right way to go. Again, we'll do it either way, but I question that one. And you know, Brian's gonna come up and you can address, he can hit more specific items on that particular item. As well as anything else, a young lady came up and mentioned a few little criteria as far as curves and ADA, that sort of thing. You can address any of those questions. So in summarizing this, based upon the max that could be allowed on this parcel is 24 units. We've dropped it down from our initial submission of 23 down to 18 lots, which is 25% less than what we started with. So as far as the design of the project, I already mentioned the wider shallow lot design. What that also does, aside from just the feel of the neighborhood when you go in to drive in, the residents themselves, we find a lot of our customers don't want huge lots. They don't want huge yards. They want to have maintenance-free, simple backyard space. This design achieves two items. One, it provides a neighborhood appeal when you drive in, like I just mentioned, but it also helps the customers that don't want the huge lots have their little backyard, the small backyard that they ask for. Plus, it allows us to provide an affordable product. Now, as far as the affordable product, sure, we cannot guarantee exactly what the price of these homes are. There's too much to do yet, too much work to do to come up with what that number's gonna be. That is not anything we can attest to, not anybody could, because we're at the tentative map stage of a lot of work to be done. But I can tell you this, I'll say it again, I said it before, the being next door with the infrastructure in place to build these homes and market these homes, that's the only reason why we would even have a chance of attaining an affordable number on the house. If this parcel was away from where we're building now, we can guarantee you the numbers would never work. So that's one of the big elements that moved us to move forward with the project. Any questions?
I could jump in with one, and I think, I didn't remember electronic gate.
Actually, I was asking if you had a question to me. Brian's gonna come up right after.
Okay, well, I just want to kind of ask if Dave and John,
It could be a rolling gate. Doesn't
Yeah.
have to be electronic.
okay.
And I think the gate is the preference of the applicant, right?
They're trying to restrict pedestrian access.
Right.
Well, yeah, the preference of the applicant, sure. But I mean, since it's mentioned in the report and all, I'd like to be able to get some kind of conclusion as far as are we or are we not gonna have to use an electronic gate versus a rolling gate? I think that would be, of course, it would be approved by staff once we submit, but I'd like to have some direction. Where we're gonna go with that. Which way?
Okay, wasn't it brought up last time, it'd be bollards on the, and if the church wanted to put up a gate?
Yeah, there are bollards that are going in. There should be bollards that go in versus a gate.
But then as Dave brought up, the church could put a gate on their property?
As long as it was approved by the fire department for access.
The issue that you run into, and the best example is Dry Creek Meadows and Cemetery Lane. It doesn't work. You need through passage because inevitably what happened over there is, I don't care where, there was a very substantial chain link fence that went in, and go out there right now. They just, the kids will find a way through, and it's just, the path of least resistance also provides the least path of damage that's gonna happen out there, because inevitably, unless they have a homeowners association or something to repair all this stuff, it's either gonna fall onto the church, or it's gonna fall onto, who knows who. They'll all become calling the city and say, hey, we heard that this is city required access. So, having just bollards out there so that kids can walk right on through.
What do we have at Village Circle and the middle school? I remember it used to be open. I thought now it had a fence there. So
I'm pretty sure it's
I
open.
thought at one point
unless
there
the
was a
school
gate, but
I think
It's been a while.
it's open, going right into the school property.
Okay,
Can I ask a question about the EVA? So
Yes.
fire department signed off on the fire trucks having to make a sharp right turn when they come out of that?
Yes.
Because I walked that parking lot today and that's pretty tight.
Oh, you mean the EVA itself? No, they have not signed up on that.
Because,
I'm sorry, I misspoke.
because they'll have to make a sharp right turn either directly out at the gate or drive down the end of the parking lot and make a sharp right turn. And it doesn't look like that would be an easy thing for the fire truck to do.
Yeah, we actually haven't had that addressed by them. We focused on the street itself, not the EVA.
I think if you go back to the exhibit, you'll see the path where the truck will fit in turns and such.
So
Dave had?
Yeah.
right there where the little red arrow is for the EVA,
That would be the access point, yeah.
that's, the truck would have to, if it's coming out, it would have to make a sharp right turn there.
Or a lot,
Because the curb cut for that parking lot is in the next bay of cars over.
I think it's something Brian can, go over with the actual exhibit up there for you, to be able to see. Do you recall the first, when Dave had the exhibit with the EVA?
Slide, we'll bring it back up.
You can bring that back up.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure the path to travel through
Yeah.
the parking lot, that's kind of the question.
Fine.
would you like to have Brian next?
Oh,
or-
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
fine, thank you, Tim.
This is easier for me to point things out.
Yeah.
Is this on? Okay. Brian Benino with Lognar Nickel. So basically for this one here, the EVA, although this is all concrete here, the EVA through here is more of a parallelogram type thing. So the truck here, it's wider, so the truck could come out through here and start the right turn and then make the left turn. So that was all looked at, that this part here could be concrete. I want to back up a little bit and explain why some of these things are, you guys got all questions, why do we have to have a EVA and all of that? City standards and most generally other public agencies, the standard length of a cul-de-sac is 500 feet. And that's a comfortable level with police and fire, that you don't need a second point of access. So right now, 500 feet would be probably right here in this area here at the knuckle. So since this project extends past the 500 feet, you need a second point of access. So really, this is the second point of access in case of emergencies, which should be controlled by police or fire. I mean, from the developer perspective, my perspective, I mean, John's right, kids find a way. I probably did that myself as a kid. But you'd probably want to discourage it from the LDS church property perspective. There's just some liability about that if you don't make that initial attempt to prevent what's going on there. Okay, so I want to back up a little bit on drainage for this parcel. There's a question was asked, how are handling the increased drainage? This project here drains to the Rancho Arroyo detention pond. So there's an existing pipe right here on the lower right-hand corner here that was installed with the cottages. So that drainage pipe goes down to the Rancho Arroyo pond. So we're connecting up to that pond, and that pond is providing stormwater treatment, detention, and to protect downstream facilities. So this is, and then this project will pay their fair share for the construction of the Rancho Arroyo detention pond.
So on that, given the new requirement that the lots will have to be higher in slope, will that, and that there'll be greater impermeability given the way the lots are configured, what will that do to sizing, shaping on the stormwater?
This parcel was included as in the drainage study for the Rancho Arroyo detention basin. It was part of the contributing area, so all of that was taken care of in the design of the Rancho Arroyo detention pond facilities. Okay, now as far as the site itself, basically the LDS church drains to the north right now, collects in a valley gutter along this line right here. See if we can get some a little better there. Along here, and then drains into here, and it kind of fills up a pond area here. And then any overflow drainage that actually comes down here and goes onto the school. So that's the way it historically has drained from the beginning. So this project is, there's retaining wall portions here, and then along the north side where those lots are going to be lifted up and redirect the drainage so we can collect it down into the streets. So the previous hearing, I talked about what you should have as a condition of approval to install the retaining wall as first item before doing grading. I'll just re-mention that here. And then as far as the sidewalks and ADA access, we are proposing to do the low profile sidewalks. So essentially there will be no ups and dips, ups and down for the sidewalks. So it'll be the old style, low profile roll curves. So that you'll have access all the way along through here and here and here. And then what we did on this one, I mean, parking was a concern on this one here. Parking was a concern, so we did plot all the parking here, and because there's no houses fronting like this portion here, these houses end up with, on average, including the on and off side, about 4.5 cars per lot. So you can park there through that entire subdivision. So as far as adequate parking, there's more than adequate parking to handle it. And then, like, as far as the EVA gate, I think there could be a solution here where the fence or maybe something more permanent, whether it's concrete block or something, could be worked out with city staff so that it's not a maintenance issue for, in the future. So I think you could work out something to do your best to make sure it's not a problem. Okay, is there any questions you have that I missed?
Why can't you just put a big gate with, metal gate with small openings? In Dixon, I don't know if you're familiar with Dixon, there's a subdivision right adjacent to the high school. And, they have a gate there that's not normally open, and I think it's for fire access. And they don't open it because kids would go through the subdivision by the hundreds, in their cars. But, it's a big, tall gate, and yeah, kids still jump over it, but, you don't see a lot of kids going over that.
Yeah. I think that's a possibility, and maybe the condition can be written that the developer has to come back to staff with a proposal to satisfy that condition. Any other questions?
Other questions?
Or if I missed something that was brought up in public
Can
hearing?
you talk about the knuckle area?
Yeah, the reason, they're trying to fit a standard house in here, so if we did the knuckle would come back into here almost another 15 feet. And basically, these two houses here, those two lots would be impacted by another 15 feet, losing 15 feet in either direction to meet city standards. So what we did to improve the corner is we made the minimum radius here for the city is 40 feet. We made it 52 on the inside right in here. And then we made this wider, like in the 60-foot range. And basically you'll have these roads here from curb to curb are 35 feet. This is almost 55 feet from here to here. And generally, we showed cars along this turn here, but generally you should be parking there anyway, sightline distance. Just to prove we had access in case cars were parking everywhere, we showed them there.
And the fire department signed off on it.
Yeah. So that's the request for revising the knuckle was that the impact on these two lots. It's like you almost have to combine them to one lot type thing. You almost lose the ability to build a same size house as the other lots.
Other questions? Okay, after this? Cam?
Yes.
Okay.
If you don't mind, it might be easier if I just use the Brian method here.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, Cam Tech, our Crown Development. There was some data that I shared last time at the last planning commission. I am gonna, for the benefit of the planning commissioners who weren't able to be here last time, so for a few of you, there may be some redundancy, but I think it's important that we go through it. On behalf of Crown, we have to say thank staff and everybody for, I feel that we've made a lot of progress with this whole fire issue, and we're very thankful for that. And I think we're getting really close, so thank you. This is a subject property. I want to share what our original plan was. Crown Development walked into Winters with the Heartlands project, and then we started looking at this LDS property kind of through that same lens, if you will, to say, let's come in here and let's build 20 some odd homes and let's, do the norm. The norm is the box on the box, 2-story homes, starting out at 1,800 square feet, maybe 2,000, because anything below that becomes really financially unfeasible for a builder. As you can see, we have several communities in this town, and the lowest square footage is about that 1,900 square feet or so. So that was our original plan. So, our design narrative was basically, let's build 2-story homes. Let's try to get as many lots. Let's go 2,000 to 2,300 square feet. Let's make Dave happy with the design guidelines. Let's make it just this beautiful gem, So that was our original design narrative. And so we invested the capital with our normal hat and said, all right, let's put together 23 lots and let's just go to town and build these homes. And what we came up with was this 2-story product, okay? And if you look at that, that looks pretty doggone pretty, okay? It's got stone. It's got all these siding features. It's got gables. It's got hips. It's got everything, okay? But then again, in order to do that, you have to start at that 2,000 square foot sweet spot, if you will, but then also you have to command higher dollars for it, okay? So then we came up with a revised plan, okay? And a revised plan was primarily a function of, let's look at winters. We're here in winters. We've been given this opportunity with staff and the city's leadership to do the Heartlands project, price point 500 plus, So we said, let's just take a look at winters and say, well, K-Hob's in town, they're at 440. HBT is in town for 475. Heartlands is in town for 520. And when you look at those price points, it's, we're here in winters, but are we really serving a large subset of the winters population? And part of this came into evolution. At one time I was at the Buckhorn, and you strike up conversations with people. It seems like every time you go there. And, so, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm helping build some of the homes out here and stuff. And, they say, oh, they're really nice homes, but gosh, I sure wish I could afford a new home in my community. I can't, so thanks, but, do something different, okay? So we looked at this and we said, let's come in and let's put together something at maybe a lower entry point, okay? But I'm gonna tell you another one of the reasons why we changed the direction of the project is that if we were here right now talking about 23 homes, 2,000 square foot plus, beautiful, large homes, okay? Several of you guys would basically say, Cal, Winters needs smaller homes, okay? Winters needs more affordable homes, because we really got our butt kicked last time when we were in here with these 2,000 square foot homes. It was like, where's the small stuff? What about everybody else? So it wasn't just the local residents, okay? But, and I have to commend you guys for that, for pounding that through our head, okay, many times, not only at the DRC level and the planning commission level, but also at the city council level. It's like, hey, what about smaller houses? We're in Winters, you know what I mean? There's a lot of local people that would love to have smaller houses, okay? So after that hit our thick skulls, we began examining an option to meet these needs, okay? So we came up with a new design narrative. Our new design narrative was, hey, and again, this was kind of weird for us because we're more the 2,000 square foot market for the last 15 years. But we said, all right, but we got to keep it simple. And because that's the only way we could, A, come to a reasonable price point that's less than K-Hob, okay? But then B is that, when you have a 1,400 square foot house, your construction costs per square foot are so dramatically increased. For example, you have a 2,400 square foot home, okay? It still has a kitchen and it still has 2 bathrooms, okay? It still has a front yard, it still has a driveway, but when you try to take all that and amortize that over 1,400 square feet, your costs for construction go up dramatically, okay? So that was our design narrative, okay? So the first thing that we started to do was we said, let's look at a land use study, okay? And we came up with saying, all right, what was once 23 lots is now 18, okay? And my computer screen is flickering saying, Tilt, what are you doing here, But we stayed the course and we came up with these 18 lots, okay? And again, there is this knuckle aspect, and thank you for getting that worked out. You know, so that was our land use study. We had a great meeting with DRC, and these designs right here, these plans were our original designs, okay, that we shared with the DRC. And I think there was some really cool creative stuff that came out of that DRC meeting. Originally, we were talking about having these 18-foot driveways, okay, to add more room to the backyards. But, you know, we figured, you know what, I think it might be better for us to have, actually, I think Bill mentioned that or something. It was that, you know what, let's do 20 feet. And I'm like, darn, you know, that does take out space out of the backyard, but let's push it back, okay? But then the back of my head, I'm going, well, that's another 100 square feet of landscaping in the front, Cam, you know, so, you know, but I think that was a great idea to make that 20 feet. And, you know, especially, and I think it helps in an ADA environment especially, okay? So, you know, we collaborated, we did some changes. You know, this is our third plan. We decided that, you know, we weren't going to try to request backyards of 10 feet. So we decided this plan 3, because it would have exceeded 50% of lot coverage, let's not do it, okay? So then, this is what all of our plans look like together, okay? And again, we could easily take our eyes off the goal being, let's get some affordable homes, okay? And I could start adding brick and masonry and do all kinds of really cool things, you know, but again, our focus essentially is that segment of the Winters community that can't come here and write a check to Crown for $520,000 to buy a house, or for $450,000 to aspire. Every dollar counts, you know what I mean? So we looked at this, and you know, and the evolution of these designs, we put a lot of reliance on our architect partner, okay? Our architect who's been designing all of our stuff for the last 15 years. Even he is saying that, Cam, this is gonna look good when you see this all together, okay? We could sit here, we're looking at black and white lines, that's all we're looking at. We're not looking at this 3-dimensionally. We're not looking at this 18 months after people move in and this plants start growing and trees start evolving. And also, people nowadays like to go to Home Depot, okay? They like to go and they can watch a YouTube video on how to add veneer all day long. And I think you're seeing it in some of these communities where people are doing a lot of this do-it-yourself stuff, okay? So anyway, that's what they came out with. So at the DRC meeting and the last planning commission hearing, I had mentioned that, and again, these are dollars we're investing, okay? Is let's put together colored aspects of this and see what these look like, okay? So this is what our floor plans actually came out to be. This one is about 1,450 square feet. Nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you know, open living area, 2-car garage, just a perfect starter home. Then we have our approximately 1,650 square foot home. Again, great room concept, you know, but again, to keep them simple and affordable, every corner, okay, we call this our 6-corner building, okay? There's essentially 6 corners, if you will, to this building, but if we start adding 8 or 10, again, that adds and adds and adds and adds, okay? That's our 3rd floor plan, okay? So now for the colored renderings, okay, this is what our 1,450 approximate square foot house is gonna look like, okay? Yeah, it's simple. It's simple as simple can get, but it's a home. It's for, you know, not everybody has the desire or the ability to come in and walk into Heartland's, you know, so even for us here, as we sit here, we may say, oh, that looks plain. But for someone in Winters who can't afford a house, this is a mansion. You know what I mean? So yes, it's simple, okay? But it's a house. It's a house for the people that, you know, make this community, okay? So that's the elevation A. Elevation B, we add some shutters, okay? Elevation C, we add this different type of stucco component that creates a little bit of a different appearance, okay? But you know what? Dave is right. Dave Dowswell is right. These look pretty simple. Okay, now this is just one plan with 3 different elevations, okay? But to kind of look at the massing, in other words, the staff report had identified that, hey, there's just one gable. Right, there is just one gable. But when you look at plan 1, that gable is at the far left of the structure, okay? The far left, okay? But then when you go to plan 2, okay, it's still at the far left, but it's a lot bigger. You see what I'm saying? It's a lot bigger from a massing perspective. Yeah, the concept is the same, okay? But the structure is different, okay? That's what our elevation A looks like for the plan 2. Elevation B for the plan 2, you know, takes on a bit of a siding look up above, some shutters, okay? And then there's elevation C, where again, we kind of harness some of that siding type of look above, okay? But then again, I just want to illustrate, yes, they are one gable, okay? But when you look at the width of the plan 1 gable versus the width of the plan 2 gable, they are in fact 2 different personalities. You know what I mean? So that's plan 2. When you get to plan 3, okay, what we wanted to do is we had kind of the smaller gable aspect that started from the left and worked its way to the right. Then we have the larger gable aspect that started from the left and worked its way to the right, okay? So for the next plan, we did something a little bit different, okay, where we kind of put it in the middle, okay? Put it in the middle to give it a whole different look. Yes, it's still one gable, okay? But it's different, okay? So that's our elevation A for that. Elevation B, okay, again, introduces some sort of the siding aspect up on top, okay? And elevation C, okay? So yeah, it's one gable, but it's different types of gables, okay? Next item I wanted to go over is the PD overlay setbacks, okay? And again, as Cal had mentioned, these lots are, you know, still very reasonably sized lots, okay? But what we wanted to do is we wanted to define, which I think this PD overlay is a great mechanism to get everybody on the same page. But if I could just have you focus on lots 1 through 7 right now, okay? On lots 1 through 7 on Carnell Street, we would have a minimum of a 14-foot rear yard for plan 2, and we have a 17-foot rear yard for plan 1. So on lots 1 through 7, we're not going to build a plan 3, okay? It's just going to be all plan 1 and plan 2. 14-foot rear yard, 17-foot rear yard, okay? And then as we work our way on Gurmeet Court, then starting with lot 8 all the way down on this side is that for the plan 3, you're going to have 17 feet of rear yard. For plan 2, it's 22 feet of rear yard. For plan 1, it's 26 feet of rear yard, which is huge, you know, huge, especially when we're looking at this, okay? So, you know, again, before we started looking through this affordable lens, we would have said, now why not build a 2,400 square foot house? Why not build a 2,200? Why not build a 2,600, okay? Obviously, the opportunity is there, okay? There's huge opportunity there. But again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, because I want to run into that guy who I met at the Buckhorn someday and say, hey, here's your more affordable home, okay? You know, so that's the lots on Gurmeet Court. Now, again, on any project, there's going to be a few anomalies here, okay? This lot 15 on Gurmeet Court is, we're going to put our smallest plan 1, and we'll have 14 feet of rear yard, okay? And then to make this EVA access effective and everything, we're going to have to create this 4th plan, which we haven't drawn yet, okay? Because like we just cut some big fat checks for the rest of the stuff. We want to make sure we're going to do this project, okay? Is it's going to be a different footprint, okay? So if you look to the right there where it says lot 18, okay? That's gonna be about a 1,435 square foot home, but our rear yard is only gonna be, 12 and a half feet or so, okay? And again, this isn't designed yet, okay, but that's our next objective, So on something like this, if we could get approval today, then as long as we could say that lot 18 has the same flavor of whatever you guys decide today, you know what I mean? That we could probably do that at the staff level. Okay. Next thing I wanted to talk about was the rear patios. But before I get into the analysis of the rear patios, for us as a builder, okay, this whole rear patio thing for us is, in essence, a way to say, hey, City of Winters, thanks for helping us collectively get together and build this project. Instead of having 18 people come bug you guys for an individual permit, or what can I do or what can't I do, or not to have a public hearing to talk about a covered patio, we just identified some parameters, okay? And those parameters was, the logic was essentially we have the shallower lots that are on Carnell Street, and we identified some parameters that said, hey, let's do 250 feet or 150 feet, okay? But frankly, for me, if you guys want this whole rear patio thing to go away, I'm okay with it. It's just been more work for us. You know what I mean? But we wanted to, in an effort to help our homeowner in the future not have to go talk to Dave and say, what can I do or what can't I do, is to establish some parameters. So again, I'm happy with whatever you decide. And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the plan one, actually, I wasn't quite completely sure what your ultimate disposition was on these covered patios, but I'm happy with whatever staff wants to do with the covered patios, because really it's going to be more for the benefit of staff.
Why don't we let Dave address that
Okay.
one we're in?
Oh, the only one that I made any sort of comment about was if you look at the attachment that shows of the plan one on
Yeah,
Gormit Court,
Right.
it shows a 400 square foot,
Right.
16 by,
right,
25 foot patio cover with a 10-foot setback.
right.
I just seem to think that was somewhat excessive.
And I think that's a great idea.
So, and if that example were to occur on a lot, why not make it more like 12 by 25, more in keeping with the other house that's shown on the plan too? And then that allows a little more of a setback on the rear yard for the patio cover.
And I agree with that. I just,
And just for and I appreciate what they've done in doing this for me. I would have done it anyhow. I would have come up with some numbers for patio covers because I've faced this too many times in my career. By them doing it, it's just thinking it through, and they're doing me a favor by showing how it can be done graphically. But I promise you, had this never been done by them, I would still propose something. They've just shown how it will work if they do it in the way they've suggested. So I appreciate the fact that they've done that.
Cool. Yeah, so really, I would almost say that just to benefit everybody's time, I'm willing to work with Dave on whatever he decides on this. Again, we're just trying to create some cohesion with these home buyers to be able to come in and say, hey, if you want, and I agree wholeheartedly with Dave. Why not on plan one? Okay, let's, instead of making it 16 feet, let's make it 12 by 25. I'm cool with that. So that was kind of the covered patio areas. Okay, and then again, here we are, we're looking at this. This is for the cul-de-sac lots, and and what we're doing is we're just sitting there crunching these numbers and trying to not exceed lot coverage and try to put on our homeowner hat and try to say, what would I want? I mean, who knows? Would somebody even want 1,000 square foot or 1,100 square foot covered patio? I don't know, but it's up to, I'm open to whatever you guys decide. I do think that there's one aspect that is very important to this, is that in the backyard of Plan 2 and Plan 3 for this area, that's like the key focal point area of the living space, you know? And that's where I said, boy, if they could have 10 feet of covered patio, that would still leave a 7-foot setback, okay? But then again, that's just Crown saying, I want to help my homeowners out as much as possible. I'll leave that up to you guys, whatever you guys see fit, you know, but, and anything less than a 10-foot almost doesn't really bring a lot of value, if you will, because there's just not that depth, right? You know, so again, I'm happy with whatever staff decides to do with these rear patios. Yeah, and thank you for recognizing that, Dave. It is a lot of work to kind of streamline this stuff. Then we said, all right, we have these other 2 lots, lot 15, if it had a plan 2 or if it had a plan 1, let's do on this lot, let's do 5-foot setback. And the reason for that is that the lot next door here, lot 16, is actually faced this way. So it's in other words, there would have been a house there to a certain degree, you know, so you know, I think that, you know, these are reasonable, but again, I'm open to whatever you guys decide on this. That one lot that we talked about that, you know, I said, let's give this guy a 5-foot setback. You know, it's, well, who's behind us? It's the church. I don't think anyone's going to be offended in walking to church and saying, I wish that patio cover wasn't 5 feet from the parking lot to the church. You know what I mean? I doubt it. Okay. If someone did say that, I'd personally remove it myself. Okay. You know, but then also, I mean, there's some architectural feasibility to some of these really cool patio covers too. In some ways, it kind of looks nice. Okay. So that's a PD overlay. Okay. Wanted to jump into some of the staff recommendations. Okay. And I just kind of put these into some of the bullet points. Wainscoting on at least 3 elevations carried around the side yard fencing. And Dave and I have talked and had a few meetings about this too. And I think it's really subjective. You know, in other words, Dave has a lot of experience, and I think a lot of Dave's stuff has brought some great creativity to I believe our Heartlands project. Okay, we didn't appreciate some of it when we were going through the process, but then when you look at the finished product, you go, you know what? I think Dave was right on that. You know what I mean? And you know, but again, looking at this from the perspective of what our goal is. Okay, mind you, we could do all kinds of cool stuff. We could add leaded glass. We could do all these things, but does that help the people be able to buy these homes at this price point? Okay. So what I did in talking to Dave, I said, who could be my best mediator on this? Okay. And the best mediator for us was our architect, because he tells us like it is. Okay. And I said, you know what? And he couldn't be here today because he had and mind you, architect does $1 million homes and communities in the Bay Area. That's why he couldn't make it today, because he had a previous commitment for a planning commission hearing, you know. So we feel, okay, again, looking through that lens with our goal in mind, okay, is that we have enough diversity based on our more affordable goal, okay. Those are great ideas, but again, keeping our eye on the ball, okay. So the next thing, as far as different roof styles, on 6 of the elevations and different roof pitches on 3 elevations, okay? Again, our opinion is, and mind you, we're taking the risk here. In other words, we're building this stuff, and we got to have it in the back of our heads and say, this stuff's got to sell, and it's got to look sexy, you know what I mean? Because if it don't look pretty, it ain't going to sell, you know? So, you know, we feel that, you know, we have enough diversity. Okay, and then it says where board and batten siding is shown on the front elevation, add the same treatment to those roofs with gable ends. Okay, and again, from a street scene perspective, I'm talking about the street scene. You got houses 10 foot apart. I don't think anybody is going to say, wow, look at the side of that house. I just don't see that. Now, on the corners with these enhanced elevations, absolutely, I think that brings value, okay? But on these houses that people are driving by at 26 miles an hour or standing and admiring, I think they're looking more at the landscaping than what's up on the side. I just can't see someone saying, did you see the side of Mary's house? Okay, that gable, there was nothing in it, you know? So I just feel that, I just feel there's no value in that. I do if we were in Heartlands and we have 10 foot and 15 foot, and in some cases 20 feet between houses, okay? But this product line and the PD overlay, you know, is these homes are 10 feet apart, okay? And then it's, the next thing was provide at least 2 different designs for the garage doors for energy efficiency and add windows to add natural light. And you know what? I think that's a great idea, okay? So, yeah, I'm trying to give here too. I'm trying to say, sure, we'll add 2 patio, we'll add 2 different garage door designs, and we'll add windows on top of the garage doors, okay? Then on plans 1 and 2, the window, staff recommends on at least 2 of the front elevations have windows with different sizes. I said, you know what? That's a good idea. Okay, let's do it, okay? Another one of the staff's recommendations was add trim around all of the windows and doors, including the garage door, okay? You know, as you saw, all of our front windows had trim around them or a shutter or something, okay? The garage doors is something that our architect said, you know what? We're not really showcasing the garage. The garage is kind of tucked in the back, okay? Let's just have the garage, kind of the garage, and let's bring more attention over here to you know, the windows and the entry, okay? Now, if you guys wanted me to add stucco trim around the garage door, fine, I'll do it, okay? But what I want to do is I also, there's you know, there's an architectural recipe in this too. So I have to look to my guy and say, are you sure? He goes, yeah. He goes, you know, because if you do it, then, you know, it just, and again, it's all subjective here. You know what I mean? This is all subjective, okay? And then also, you know, they were talking about adding trim on the side or the rear of the house, okay? Again, I don't see the value there. Sorry about that. Okay, the homes on lots 1 and 15, the corner lots, enhanced elevations. Okay, Mr. Contreras, you had mentioned, or the question came up that on the enhanced elevation, is there going to be a fence covering the side of it? Okay, in some applications, it probably would have. On this particular project, the fence is actually going to be coming from the back and it's going to hit the house unless we ask for further deviation on our setbacks, okay? So what we would be doing is that we are a total proponent of saying, let's make this look better on the sides because it's visible, okay? But we don't have an opportunity to be popping out components of the building because we're maxed out, you know what I mean? And we can't come out further. And so, you know, we'd have to sit down and say, hey, let's go ahead and let's add some windows. Let's add some trim on the side, maybe some shutters. Let's do something. And all we're talking about is one house. You know, I mean, as you come down Anderson, you know, we're just talking about the side of one house that you're going to see from the street scene. You know, so we're all into doing enhanced elevations without affecting the structure of the building. Okay. You know, another thing in the staff report, there was a blurb about commission to advise applicant on the above items and or continue until the December 10th hearing. Okay. And I think Mr. Contreras, I think he brought it up when we had our first planning commission hearing. what is your time frame? Or, you know what I mean? And we said, ooh, our time frame is hurting, okay? But we said, you know what, maybe till December 12th, you know what, if we had to, again, we have to give in here too, you know? And I think it was pretty much made clear after you asked that we said, all right, December, you know? We can't really,
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. It was November 12th we were talking about, not December 12th.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is that in Dave's staff report, it is identified.
No, I understand that.
Right.
I'm just saying that the last hearing, we were talking about extending from October.
Oh, okay, I'm
22nd
sorry. Yeah.
to November.
Yeah, November, right.
Not December.
Okay, right. So what I'm saying is that if we continue this now till the December 10th hearing, this deal may die. It probably will. And again, we don't own the land right now, okay? We're trying to make it happen, okay? So, and I'll just peruse through real quick. I don't know if you really need to get into, okay. You know, okay. I lost my whole train of thought there. You gave me, you give me stage fright. Okay. I can wrap it up now if that's what you want me to do. You want me to just stop?
I think you've covered a lot.
Well, there was.
Okay, a couple points, let's, because we want to get everybody a chance to talk about it.
Okay, all right, so then, so I'm just gonna jump right into what our goal is here, okay? We are here breathing, alive, with energy, ready to provide smaller single-story homes, 14 to 1,900 square feet, a project that has not been seen with all this construction evolution that's been taking place. We want to provide a lower entry price point than current new home options, okay? And as Cal had mentioned, this is still in the oven, okay? We can't attest to some sort of a price, okay? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we can actually make this project happen, okay? So we have to try to say, squeeze as much as possible. Now, if it turns out that, you know, we could maybe add a few more dollars, and obviously we would, but we can't be compelled to do it now. You know what I mean? What we want to do is we want to continue this project, but, you know, we need, okay, getting back to that, that's our goal. Provide the lower entry price point, provide local residents with a new home option that is more affordable than current projects, okay? But this goal is nothing unless we can get concessions from you guys. Otherwise, the goal is not achievable. I think we've made some great traction on allowing the 5-foot side yard setbacks, okay? We've made some great, we had some great traction on the smaller rear yards, okay? What we're asking is we're asking you guys to accept our designs as presented. That's the ask, okay? And again, because there's so much stuff that is still in the oven, and we want to make this a reality for 18 people, 18 families, okay? Again, we're asking to deviate from the Winters design guidelines for this infill project. That is not a through street, okay? That's our goal. We can't do it without you. I thank you for your time, and I got 4 more seconds in the 2 minutes, but anyway. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions, commissioners?
And while you're.
Comments? Discussions? Okay, thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Discussion? Dave?
Oh.
Raised your hand?
Sorry. When I've seen actual affordable projects, not projects, but proposals to have affordable in subdivisions, it's always said that the house has to be substantially similar in design. Yet here we have something that's not really affordable, officially, yet they're pulling all the design off of it to, make it cheaper to build. So I'm wondering if we're looking at going the wrong way with our design guidelines here by thinking about waiving them. You know, in the past, when we've seen developers want to put affordable mixed into the rest of their, you know, building, it's always said that it has to be substantially similar design.
It can't scream out, this is an affordable house.
And here, we're getting basic boxes, you know, and being asked to waive our design guidelines. It's not that it's not a through street, that people live on it and have to look at it.
So let's see,
Commissioner?
I just want to talk about the financing piece of that. So when you are building a large subdivision and you're doing some affordables mixed in, you're essentially financing the lower price. They're subsidized by the sales price of the non-affordables.
Yeah.
And what's happened, at least for every project that I've been involved with in the city, they have never gotten below 120% of median income. And for that, they've all petitioned for in lieu fees. Because the price of subsidizing them is by the market won't work. So the bigger policy discussion on a national basis and even on an international basis is how to get to product that would be affordable by design. Is this it? I don't know. But if you were like me and you grew up in a property made available by cheap FHA money that went to developers, these boxes are nicer than the box I grew up in and probably twice as big. So, but that's how lots and lots of people got into home ownership in the post-war boom. Is that right or wrong? That's a different issue. And what's the trade-off, I think, between the design standards and achieving compact development? Because part of our design guidelines also favor the larger square footage house when the market is clearly also positioning for a smaller product. And I think the question before the commission is really one of how do you repackage the product in a way that is compatible with the city of Winters and its desires, but packaged in such a way that it's going to be available to sort of people who actually live here. And I think that's the conundrum. I have a couple of comments on the design piece. Most of the waivers on things like setbacks, although were you not saying switch the 10-foot setback on the garage side, 5 on the other?
Where they can.
Where they can, as one
There
way.
aren't a lot of lots that are gonna have that capability.
Only a
Yeah,
couple.
good
So those are some of the considerations. But again, right, 18's not gonna subsidize a bunch of affordables, and these are not being, and that's also the rub, right? We're not saying how many of these have to be affordable, so the market is gonna be some market price. You're not guaranteed that market price is gonna be lower. And indeed, I would also say if you're trying to reach Winters residents, you should have to find some marketing plan that markets to Winters residents. But that's sort of the piece behind substantially the same.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments?
Commissioner Baker, I think you articulated it 100% on point. It's really is fundamentally the analysis we have to do. And I think another distinction is in those cases, Commissioner Adams, that was compelled affordable housing. And so that's kind of a whole nother issue. But I think Kate articulated it well as well when she said, what happens if they're not really affordable? And I don't just mean affordable in the, low income, median, I mean, just at the end of the day, if we sacrifice some of our design standards, and then you have 18 homes and everybody goes, you sacrifice the standards and then we couldn't buy them anyways. That I think would be the worst case scenario. All of that being said, it kind of hits the point in a lot of ways, and I think it's, you'd rather have a house that doesn't have those things than no house at all, and I agree that my brother was priced out of Winters last year, and that says something about the homes that are getting built, and in no way is that anything against the other homes, the bigger homes, because we want a broad range of homes. So in this case, the question really is is the commission willing to set aside some of the design requirements and in exchange for having homes that are somewhat below what the other ones are?
And I think you're talking, what you're trying to reach, I think, is what you would call naturally affordable. In other words, it's an affordable market for the market that exists here. Hence, finding a way to have a marketing plan that marketed to a price range that met people who actually live in the community. But I do have some comments on
Yes.
design.
Okay.
If that's okay.
That would be fine.
So I do agree on the not trimming out the garage door because that is essentially putting eye makeup on it and will make it move forward visibly. And some of the goal on that is to, minimize that front garage door. However, my 900 square foot cracker box FHA that I grew up in with my family did have trim on the side windows and the doors. So I would think trim on the side windows and the door would be nice. It didn't have any on the back windows though, so I'm just gonna where no one could see it. On the roof line, I think swishing those 18 in there, especially given that the lots on the entry can only be Plan 1, Plan 2, and you can't vary the look with a Plan 3 model, you need to do something on a roof line. 5 of them with some variable roof line so that you can break it up along that line. So you've got a little bit different massing and articulation. Just, I love a wider gable and a smaller one, but I'm gonna guess it's gonna be lost on most people driving down the street.
Okay.
So, slight bit of roofing change, whether you're changing the pitch.
Can we just go interactive on this, on that topic right now then?
That's up
Why
to
don't
the
you
chair.
come up to the,
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Okay, in other words, we have 9 different elevations, okay? If we need to say that 3 elevations, 1 per plan, okay, needs to have, okay, and I need to qualify this, okay? You see the gable area there, right? Okay, if 1 plan or 1 elevation for each plan, if that has to be a hip as opposed to a gable, I'll do it. Okay, in other words, that changes the roof lines, okay? But if we're talking about trying to change the whole roof into a hip type of situation, that gets very costly, okay? But I have no problem with that. In other words, and Dave has beat me over the head the last few weeks on this issue too, okay? Again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to not be compelled to do it, okay? Because of everything that's in the oven. But as I sit here today, if we need to have 3 elevations, 1 per plan, to where that gable aspect turns into a hip, done.
Question,
Yes.
a hip means on the angle, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir. So do you see how you see the roofing behind the gable?
Oh,
Then what you would see is at that same plate line, above that, you would just see all roof. So then it creates
I
this,
see.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah, so that would be, hip, and, okay,
My house.
sure, done.
So like,
would that satisfy?
Designing at the dais is the worst way to design a camel. You're gonna end up with a camel when we're done.
Yeah.
no, I'm just saying, just finding some articulation in the roof line, and I'm actually following what you had put in your comments as well. I'm not trying to design from the dais personally. I've already talked about dressing out the side windows, and yes, things that are visible as you drive around the corner need to be fully articulated.
Can I, and again, because it's very important that as we leave here today, that we all have the same understanding, okay? So on the gable, we talked about, it's the middle gable or side, that turns into a hip. But then the side windows that you're talking about, are you talking about putting trim on those? Because you won't see those
But your
except for the enhanced elevation.
Sure, but your neighbor will,
And the owner sees it.
and the owner sees it.
On the sides?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so trim the side windows.
Well, John,
This is just my comment.
We should get comments tonight that this is coming back. It just is. The idea that we're gonna, this is not how we've ever done business, is trying to, give and take on the dais. They presented a number of things that the commission doesn't have from a transparency standpoint, from a package standpoint. I think Commissioner Baker pointed out, that we're really looking at affordability by design aspect here. These things need to be packaged and brought back. Because people need to be able to understand, I have no clue what you might want to try and vote on tonight. And I think that the public, the applicant, everybody involved. So I think we can get the notes from what the comments that people have. Then, as the applicant says, this thing's being baked. We aren't going to do something half-baked tonight. We're going to do, if we can, let's get the notes and put this into a package that isn't going to show up until the applicant and the staff understand what is in that package and
And
that's
I
it.
appreciate that, John. I'm just making commissioner comment from my perspective, not that we were planning to have a final design for
Yeah.
that.
And just so you know, you can act on the other two aspects, and that can move forward to the council, the map itself and the plan development overlay. What you'd be bringing back is what you have the approval rights over, which is design review. So in the end, they're not losing anything because they're not gonna get their other entitlements from the council until after this comes back to you. Because the earliest this can go to the council and get finalized is the second meeting in December. So it's not as bad as it seems.
well, and and the point I was gonna make, and I'll let you get, it was that, to John, and John made the point clearly, we do send things, we do agree on things, and we have one or two things that say, and staff has approval on that, and they'll work it out, but this goes, I think all the points we've hit here and the points that are being made, and I was gonna just mirror Commissioner Baker's words that, and I was pleased to see the number of things on the comments where you said, we can do that, that's all moving in the right direction. That we need to give you as much guidance as we can, but this is gonna have to come back in a more complete thing that, as you described, what Pat was saying, you're describing the roof line. I have absolutely no idea what that is or how that looks like if you change it. And so, so I think what we can accomplish tonight, and I think to Dave's point, we could approve the tentative map and the PD zoning overlay and let that go to the planning commission, or that's us, to the city council for them to go over that. But the design part of it, we want to, I think tonight all we'll do is give you as much input as we can and look for that to come back on December 10th. And,
Can I ask a question?
yes,
Okay, so, so one of the things that Dave was requesting was to add a hip roof. In other words, what I had just agreed.
On the other end, not the part you're talking about,
Yeah,
although
see,
that's an option,
Yeah.
I thought of it on the end cables. And you're
Yeah.
thinking
See, because I would just hope that for us to bring back more colors and more detail, it's dollars, it's investment, it's risk money. So I would like to be able to leave here today with a couple of things. In other words, staff strictly brought up HIP, okay? And I agreed to that in the front, okay? The only other thing that was kind of looming is some veneer. So if I brought back some veneer, okay, would I be,
well, why don't we let each commissioner
Okay.
speak and voice I think you'll have a good idea where we are.
Okay.
And Dave and I spent a fair amount of time discussing this, and I think we can all kind of give you our point.
Great.
And then we'll move on to the tentative map of the PD zone overlay. and go from there. Back to Commissioner Baker.
I think those are my comments. I'm not strictly saying, you know, you have to do veneer. I like the fact that you're switching it up with the batten, but I do think, you know, paying attention to the trim out details matters.
Okay. Other commissioners?
I like a lot of the various looks, you know, the way you can treat the front of the house, even though it's basically the same roof line. But I do think having a different roof line would make it look a lot more variable and less like just, well, tract homes, I guess.
Okay. I think on the,
Sorry. I said you get a turn too, I keep interrupting, sorry.
Greg, go ahead,
No,
you're
no,
right.
no,
Nope,
no,
nope.
please, no. I
Bill
already-
taught me I'm always last.
Okay.
That's the hardest thing I do up here.
I already went once, but I'm having trouble quantifying what we're giving up. That is, if we would have said, somebody made a motion right now, I'm not making the motion. If somebody said, I move that we approve as it is, what is the difference between that and kind of the final outcome? And how are we supposed to analyze the economic difference in that? And that's kind of where I'm struggling, is if they said, hey, we're gonna build these things and we're not gonna give you a hard number, but guess what? The market's gonna say 250, I think we'd all jump at it. So how are we supposed to quantify that?
You're gonna get a house for less than
Before, yeah.
Well, I
Before Dave, you know,
it should be a consideration. There has to be some quantification and not just. what
Here's
we'd
the
like to go
challenge, here's the challenge of that quantification. Lisa and I are on the design review committee. Aspire came to that with the idea of we're gonna have less expensive homes. We're gonna have a meeting. We're gonna take notes, there'll be a quiz. But we're gonna have less expensive homes. And I said, because I know, you know, we do not and cannot dictate the price. It's a private enterprise. They invest their money, they take their risk. They get the, and if the market goes to hell in a handbasket, you know, it's their problem, not ours. But I said, you know, what are we, you're not committed to it, but give me, you know, an idea. And I actually pushed for that in the past on a number of projects with not much input. And Aspire said, you know, because I said, if you could get a $380,000 house, and they said, well, that's what I think these will go for. We go, that's exciting. And then we approve everything, and then they've come in the market at 440. And so, you know, that's really what we're dealing with. And so if as a planning commission, I think we're giving up very small lots. They're coming in with harder to build, smaller homes, which I think is great, and they're absolutely right. I mean, if it drops 25% in square footage, it doesn't drop 25% in price, so that's a challenge. But I think in the long run, we're here forever. Winters is here forever. These houses are gonna be here forever. We can bend the design guidelines. I think it would be a mistake to break them. And so we fudge them a lot. We fudge on some of the design. You know, these are coming a long way. Those color pictures are getting there. But I think a lot of the points that staff made are key points.
I think taking up the garage doors and the variable window size and building out the trim and then working on roof variability gets us closer.
And I think trimming all windows and with the exception of the garage, but trimming all the windows and doors will make them look like the rest of the houses in winters without breaking the bank. Hopefully, I'm not a home builder, so I'm guessing. So Greg, if that's.
And part of this is an internal struggle. In other words, I'm asking for guidance on how you should analyze it, because to me, I don't know what the price difference is in metal fence posts versus wood fence posts, but I assume that's something. They're one-story homes, unlike the two-story homes, which I know there, you definitely want to make sure that the back of the house looks nice because your neighbor is constantly staring at it from their house and from their yard. They're one-story homes, so you're not going to have quite the impact there. The side, there's a 8-foot fence. I don't know how much of the window your 6-foot fence. I'm 5'6", I guess I can't see it. But, you know, it just seems like there's all of these mitigating factors. And I say, my inclination is, okay, let's go do it. And I say, well, but someday I'm gonna have to answer the question, why did you make that decision? And so you have to know what you're weighing it against, and that's where I'm struggling with. And so if somebody can share kind of how they're analyzing it, that'd be helpful.
Our job is, I think, to make, is to try to help them achieve their goal, smaller, which we encourage, smaller, more affordable homes. But they gotta be homes that owners are gonna be proud of, and that we're going to feel all right about as planning commissioners when they're built, and when 20 and 30 years, hopefully someone's still around by then, we, look at them and go, yeah, that was kind of neat, that worked out. And not homes that we go, ooh, man, we broke the rule, we broke the guidelines, we didn't bend them. That would be my take on it. So, at this point, as we approach 9
But I
o'clock.
would like to say, I
Yeah.
do think that they made a lot of progress from what they originally brought in.
Can I ask a question?
Probably not.
Let's let Dave,
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, I mean, there's some things that I think we can all show you next time that I don't think will involve a huge expenditure of funds from their architect. Different size windows, adding the hips. One of the things you can do to the corner lots, they don't want to do it, is make the end gables hips. So that when you approach the side of the house, you're not staring at a 20-foot high gable, you're staring at a hip roof. And obviously you'd hip the other side of the same house. So at least on 2 of the lots, you'd have hips on the ends and not hips on the front. So there's ways to, mitigate it, make it better without, I think, huge changes in what they've shown you here tonight. And I'm not really criticizing the facade so much as just the sameness of how they all look. And when you have 18 homes with the same gable ends running down the street, I guarantee you they're gonna look somewhat monotonous. But it's only a short street.
Boston row houses.
But there are ways, at least like you suggested, I never thought of, well, I should have thought of hipping the front roof instead of the side roofs, but that's an alternative. So I think between now and December 10th, even though we may not 100% agree on the changes that they can make a lot of these, and maybe, speaking to the commission, satisfy you, which is really in the end, who they have to satisfy.
Do you feel that we've given you enough input?
I think so.
That you have a good chance of them coming back with a positive recommendation on what they present?
Yeah, and yes, I
Okay.
think so. I think so.
Cam?
Okay, and thank you for this interactive action here. I would like to be able to walk away with something, okay? In other words, and I'm totally into collaborating on alternatives, okay? Could I walk away with something that at least one of these elevations would be suitable for each plan? For example, you're looking at what would be one elevation for Plan 3, because truly, it's gonna cost us every bit of, by the time we start getting back to the chalkboard, getting these color renderings done, it's gonna be, could I walk away with something that says?
Cam, I think at this point, I don't think the commission can give you that.
Okay.
I think, we rely heavily on staff recommendations. None of us, I don't know if well, actually some of us built houses, but and we rely heavily on staff recommendations. So we've given, I think, a lot of input on the design features. I think you've come a long ways on it. I don't think on the design we can give you anything hard and fast other than Dave feels like he's got enough input and you've done enough that on December 10th, we can see a product that there's a good chance everybody can get behind. And I think really that's what we can give you tonight. We can address the tentative map and the development zoning overlay, which, and I think I think that staff was in agreement with that, and if we have an agreement on the commission, and if we have a motion.
I would happily move the staff recommendation with regard to the tentative map for the PD overlay, and, you want us to make the CEQA finding as well? And the CEQA finding.
The CEQA findings. Do we have a second on that? We have a second on that. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes. So that's what you have tonight. You got a lot of input, and Dave and you have your work cut out for you, and we'll see you on December 10th. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Quick question, you mentioned that, Dave, I think you mentioned it, that the second council meeting of December would be when
So,
they would take up. what
well,
we
no,
just
no,
voted
no, no,
on.
I misspoke.
Okay,
They won't have a final decision until the second council meeting. If we put it on the December 3rd for the PD overlay and the map, then the PD overlay has a second reading on the 17th. And so that's when the council's action becomes quote unquote final. And then there's a 30-day legal challenge period, which is true of all ordinances, which would take them into the next year.
so on December 10th, when this comes back and come to some resolution, they would be able to take that up on the next meeting for the first vote, or for the
So
second?
if you approve that
That-
design review on the 10th, that has a 10-day appeal period. Assuming it's not appealed, it takes effect December 20th.
It doesn't go to.
Oh, it doesn't go to
It
the
doesn't go to the
Correct.
city
Correct.
council.
It stops with you.
Point of order, though, it is a public hearing, and have you asked us to open and continue the public hearing, or do you
Well,
want
that's
us
what,
to?
that's what I'm hearing you. I don't know about whether you have to reopen it because,
Well, he closed it.
yeah,
so
it
technically-
just seemed that you need to vote to continue the design review portion.
So what am I supposed to do?
Just the design review portion.
Yeah, we will continue the design review portion of this hearing.
We need to vote.
We need to vote. I need a motion
So
on that.
I will move to continue the review of the design review portion to the December meeting.
And we've got a second, a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, so we have done that. I'm sorry I closed that. And I believe that that closes the meeting. There's any staff comments? John has none. He's made all of them.
Great Salmon Festival.
Great Salmon Festival, excellent Dia de Muerto. And there is, everybody on the commission got this about affordable housing, if you can make it.
I already got tickets.
And yep, and that would be great if you can make it. And at 9:06, this meeting is closed. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you
all.
One of them,
Brian.
Was this one your Brian? You know what's in the my neighbor is my.
Sure.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's what we did. Your,
design review, I guess.
Tentative map.
I'm sorry.
Like me, I'm just. So
I-
I.
There's a 10-day appeal to that.
Moderate.
December
Moderate.
14th, it takes it.
Part of the affordable program. It looks like we.
That's
Like-
Yeah, this
Well, they're saying, no, they don't look attractive. I'm like,
Monday, 11:18.
it's attractive to me, it's my first house, right?
Tracy. There's a 2 hour thing in David. It's about my doctor. Somebody I need to clean my first day. And, it's about the third one. The answer.